Before 1990, the world was a different place. Obstacles excluded almost 1/5 of our population from joining fully and meaningfully into American life. In the years since, the Americans with Disabilities Act has opened the way for people with disabilities to join the mainstream of American life. And yet millions of highly qualified workers still find the business community unwelcoming.
Keep your shoulders up, keep your knees straight. When I first applied for this job as a personal trainer, they were shocked. What could a person like me possibly do for a business like theirs?
As our population ages and baby boomers retire, America will lose 20% of its workforce by the year 2030. To maintain just the jobs we have now, without growing the workforce, the country needs to add 10 to 15 million new workers between now and 2015. Where will all these new workers come from? One underutilized source of highly qualified new workers is people with disabilities.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The ongoing removal of many of the physical barriers that literally barred the door have given many more people with disabilities access to higher education. Recent technological advances have made life easier for many people with disabilities. Many businesses also say they are counting on attracting and keeping the over 50 worker to help with the shortfall. Since 1 in 4 people over the age of 50 has a disability, keeping older workers on the job will require a new sensitivity to their needs. Like their younger counterparts, many need simple accommodations to keep them in the workforce.
Well, my bad hip was forcing me into retirement, and I talked to the boss and said that if he'd take me off the line and put me on the forklift, I could stay on. And now I'm manager of the warehouse and everybody's happy.
What would you recommend?
Studies show that 92% of consumers look favorably at companies that employ people with disabilities. 87% say they prefer to give their business to companies that hire people with disabilities.
At McDonald's, we absolutely know that to be fact. We employ individuals with disabilities at all levels of our restaurant and staff organization. Many businesses across America are hiring people with disabilities for reasons that have nothing to do with charity, but everything to do with running a great business. And yet, many businesses are overlooking this important group of potential employees for reasons that have more to do with myth than fact.
Why don't I hire people with disabilities? I don't have a clue where to begin. I'm already overworked and it's just too much trouble to find qualified people.
Finding qualified people is always tough, no matter what kind of employee you're looking for. Many employers can feel overwhelmed, but it may not be as difficult as they think to actually find qualified assistants. There are a lot of resources, both federally and at the local level, that can assist you in this process. Many employers are unaware that there's a $15,000 yearly tax deduction that can be taken to remove architectural or physical barriers. And there's a $5,000 tax credit that can be used to purchase equipment or modify equipment, as well as provide other services. We'll provide more information about these resources at the end of the video.
Frankly, my concern is that I might have to hire someone who has a disability, even if they're not qualified.
Well, you don't have to. Any candidate that you interview when you're looking for employees to fill any position, candidates have to meet specific criteria that you have determined that's necessary. And those are experience, prior experience, education, work history, all of those kinds of things, and that's very legitimate. And a person with a disability that comes to you to look for a job has to meet those basic requirements. If they don't, just like anyone else, they're simply not someone who's qualified to get that job for you.
Okay, now what's the flavoring on this?
But if, on the other hand, they do meet your qualifications and they're the best candidate, you should hire that person with a disability. You have to remember that the ADA just simply levels the playing field for folks with disabilities and gives them the chance to compete for and be hired if they're the best candidate for the job.
I don't have to worry about hiring people with disabilities because no one with a disability can do this work anyway. In my line of work, nobody will even apply.
You might never think of an individual with a disability as being able or interested in working for you. Some people see the disability while others see the ability. The fact of the matter is, people with disabilities can do most kinds of jobs today, especially with technology. Technology that we didn't think possible just a few years ago. People with disabilities can do all kinds of jobs, some that may surprise you. Individuals with disabilities are doing jobs like doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, computer programmers, restaurant managers, architects, and the list goes on. My recommendation is don't exclude individuals with disabilities from your applicant pool based upon stereotypes and false assumptions. You'll be missing out on a large and talented and diverse group of potential employees.
Well, I've thought about taking a chance and hiring a person with a disability, but it's far too risky. Once I hire them, I can't fire them.
Of course you can fire them. Your employees with disabilities are hired to do a job and need to be held as accountable as any other employee. The Americans with Disabilities Act does not require you to lower your production standards. Your employees with disabilities must be treated fairly and must be evaluated in a manner consistent with all other employees. It is true that some employees with disabilities will need accommodations in order to assist them to perform the essential functions of a job. Having a disability does not shield an employee from having to meet performance standards or to adhere to workplace policies or rules.
Well, this is a busy office with usual office politics. It will really upset my other employees if I were to give special treatment to people with disabilities.
We don't give special treatment to people with disabilities. We provide them the tools so they can perform their job. Just as we provide ergonomic chairs to individuals, special keyboards for people who might have trouble typing, or special lighting, screens for their computers, we're only providing them the tools so they can effectively perform their jobs.
The truth is, disabled people usually don't stay long enough to make all the time and money I spend worthwhile. And everyone knows they miss a lot of time from work.
People with disabilities are more reliable. Studies have shown that people with disabilities miss less work and have a less turnover rate than people without disabilities. Actually, the Marriott Hotel did a study between 1999 and 2003, and the study showed that the staff with disabilities had a turnover rate of only 6% compared to people without disabilities. The rest of the staff had a higher turnover rate of 52%. So it really is a myth that people with disabilities are unreliable.
I understand disabled people might be able to do the work, but I'm not going to hire them because my insurance costs would go through the roof.
That's just not true. The Americans with Disabilities Act does not require you to provide your employees with disabilities additional health care benefits or different health care benefits than you provide to all your other employees. The Americans with Disabilities Act merely requires that you provide your employees with disabilities the same option as all the other employees have to participate in your group health benefit program. And you should know that a Cornell University study has shown that an employer's health insurance rates rarely go up because they hire people with disabilities. But let me be clear, the Americans with Disabilities Act does not allow an employer to fail to hire a person with a disability because of assumptions that their insurance rates will go up because of that employment. In fact, a Marriott Foundation study has shown that there is little likelihood of an increase in your rates because you are hiring people with disabilities. You must base your hiring decisions on objective evidence, not on stereotypes or misconceptions about people with disabilities.
I hire a lot of people in my business, but I stay away from recruiting people with disabilities. I don't want to say anything wrong, and I'm not at all sure what I'm allowed to ask in an interview and what I'm not.
Conducting an interview is a very simple task. You just treat everyone the same. You ask them how they are going to perform the function of their job, but you cannot ask them whether or not they have a disability. Of course, if a person has an obvious disability, you can ask them how they intend to perform their job. But what you'll be doing is asking them about their abilities and not their disabilities.
This is a service business. Having folks like that working here would make my customers uncomfortable. They make me uncomfortable.
Being uncomfortable is not a reason to reject an applicant that's qualified. Many people are not comfortable initially interacting with a person with disability if they haven't had that interaction before. It's something new and unknown. Maybe the fear of saying something that's wrong or offending the person with a disability is what they have. But if you and your customers interact more frequently with a person or people with disabilities, you're going to find that your fears and your uncomfortableness will actually, will probably fade away.
I would definitely hire the disabled people if they could do the job. But the accommodations I would have to provide for them to do this job would bankrupt me.
Not true. The Americans with Disabilities Act only requires that employers make reasonable accommodations to persons with disabilities in their workforce. Reasonable accommodations are job accommodations that can be done fairly easily and inexpensively. They are merely designed to allow the employee to do the essential functions of his or her job. Many accommodations are quite simple. Modifying work schedules to accommodate an employee who depends on paratransit to get to and from work. Allowing an employee who has diabetes to have snacks during the course of the workday. Modifying a desk by putting it up on wooden blocks so that a wheelchair user can have easy access to his or her desk.
Could you put that in final for me? I'd like it to go out today. Okay.
Allowing a change in personnel policies so that an employee who has a service animal can use the service animal at the work site.
Undergrading.
Some accommodations will involve more.
Who should we list in the meeting?
I think we should list any potential witnesses.
For an employee who is deaf or hard of hearing, the provision of a sign language interpreter in certain jobs may be required. For a person who is blind or has low vision, a reader may be useful. Some accommodations involve the purchase of accessible equipment. In the area of technology, the purchase of a voice-activated computer system might be useful for some employees.
More information about status reports.
Others might benefit from the use of an automated door opener. Providing reasonable accommodations is usually far less expensive than you might think. The Americans with Disabilities Act does not require you to provide any reasonable accommodation that would result in an undue hardship. How do you determine an undue hardship? You look at your overall resources, the size of your business, and how you operate. You also don't have to provide the most expensive accommodation in any given circumstance, or even the accommodation that the employee first requests. The important thing to do is to provide an accommodation that is effective for the person with a disability, cost-effective for your business, and allows the employee to do the essential functions of his or her job.
As we've seen, the sheer number of new workers America needs makes a very strong business case for hiring people with disabilities. Employees with disabilities can also give you insight into how to attract some of the $175 billion in discretionary income people with disabilities spend each year. And polls show that consumers are overwhelmingly positive toward companies that employ people with disabilities. The myths, it seems, are just that, myths. Here are some resources about employing people with disabilities. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's website provides lots of information to help you. Go to www.eeoc.gov. The Job Accommodation Network has a great deal of information about accommodations that have worked for all types of disabilities and job situations. They're happy to discuss your specific situation with you and can be reached at 1-800-526-7234 voice or 1-877-781-9403 TTY. And if you have questions about the ADA, please visit our website at www.ada.gov or call the Department of Justice's ADA Information Line at 1-800-514-0301 for voice or 1-800-514-0383 for TTY users. You can talk directly to one of our ADA specialists.